playing the bad guy, but I want to play a bad guy that's for real. There was some substance and character, you know, and not just a crazy fool with a gun.
When Above the Rim hit theaters in 1994, it wasn't just another grimy New York street flick. It was a peek into New York's black underworld, with Tupac Shakur's Birdie character right at the center.
Wait, man. We ain't trying to hurt nobody.
Gold chains swinging, leather jackets creaking, a smile that could slice through steel. Birdie was that slick gangster that gangsters want to look like.
Tell him, man, you've been working on my game. Telling you, we gonna play college ball.
Like college? Can't barely read. How the hell are you going to college?
But what the cameras couldn't catch was that Birdie wasn't just fiction. He was Haitian Jack, a slick, real-life gangster.
Doing a movie, Above the Rim, and I didn't know it at the time, but he was studying me for the role that he was playing in this movie.
To Pac, Jack was exactly the street guy to be like, with his signature sleek dress-up.
What he was into at the time was way beyond my, you know, it was above my level.
Right, of what,
his thing was violence, his thing was street.
But their bond hurtled Pac straight into one of rap's biggest scandals, when Tupac was convicted of a woman in a hotel room, an incident Tupac called a setup.
Well, I told Pac, man, I say, I think you're out of your league right now.
If you thought Birdie was cold-blooded, you'll be surprised how much worse Haitian Jack is. Let's talk about it. In 1994, the streets of New York were alive. Every crack in the pavement, every chain-link fence around a battered basketball court seemed to hum with stories. Dreams were built on asphalt and broken just as fast. Above the sirens, the blaring radios, the grinding of ambition against poverty floated the legend of Above the Rim, a movie that didn't just capture the streets, it knew them too well.
It's a true story. In New York City, a couple of players that's playing now were in an incident where they played for this guy. The referee made a crucial call at the end. One guy, the owner, didn't like the call, and they killed the referee.
Set against a world where kings were made and murdered with a flick of the wrist or the tip of a gun barrel, Above the Rim was supposed to be about basketball. But it quickly became clear it was about survival, about the choices that hunted you down even when you ran fast enough to leave your own shadow behind. And right there at the crossroads of charisma and menace stood Birdie.
Fortunately, basketball is a contact sport. And I'm a real no-contact kind of guy. Being 165 and all, I'm not trying to bump into too many people. Basketball was never my thing, but running the basketball players, I could always relate to that.
Flashy suits, razorblade smile, a glint in his eye that told you he loved you, right up until he had to destroy you. Birdie wasn't a villain in the cartoon sense. He was the type you shook hands with and prayed you still had your fingers afterward. He ruled not just with muscle, but with magnetism.
People really didn't believe that it goes on. It's like, local drug dealers own teams. Instead of fighting against other drug dealers in other neighborhoods and having wars, they play ball.
And for those who thought he was just a figment of Hollywood's imagination, they weren't paying attention, because Birdie wasn't born on a screen. He was ripped almost whole from the real-world Haitian Jack.
Doing a movie, Above the Rim, and I didn't know it at the time, but he was studying me for the role that he was playing in this movie.
Jack told me some really funny stories. He'd say like, hey, you think it's easy robbing drug dealers? He goes, I took a guy once and, we got these guys at gunpoint and I go to get the bag.
So Birdie was Haitian Jack, just with a different name, a different stage. But it's all the same playbook. When Birdie recruits Kyle, the young basketball prodigy, it's not with threats or brute force. It's seduction, money, women, protection.
What's up, man? You running with me or what?
Hey, look, Birdie, I'd like to, man, but my coach already...
A life beyond worrying about college scholarships or the daily dangers of the block. Birdie wasn't just a gangster, he was an institution. Like Jack, he wasn't some random corner boy. He owned the streets and everyone knew it. When Birdie steps onto the court, he doesn't dribble, he doesn't shoot. He watches and controls.
Oh, so my time ain't money, huh? I see you finally decided to join us. Get dressed.
The ballers become pawns, and when the game doesn't go his way, people get hurt. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon, always soon. That ruthless manipulation, that quiet domination, is straight from Haitian Jack's playbook.
One day he said to me, I'm glad I met you when I did, because it really helped me with that character I was working on. And I said, You got something for me? And he's like, yeah, man, you know, just your swagger, the way you handle yourself, and how everybody's always around you.
Tupac Shakur himself admitted that by the time he stepped into Birdie's shoes, he wasn't imagining the character. He was channeling someone he knew, someone who had taken him under his wing in the cold, shark-infested waters of early 90s New York. But for all the movie's rawness, all its grit, Above the Rim was still a movie. It flirted with the truth, but never dared to stare it down. It gave glimpses of Birdie's cruelty, the betrayals, the fear he spread like wildfire. But it stopped short of showing just how deep the roots went, how real the danger was. Because the true story behind Haitian Jack wasn't just about a gangster running streetball teams. It was about an entire ecosystem of power and fear, honor and betrayal. Loyalty bought and sold like cheap jewelry. It was about a man so magnetic that even someone like Tupac, born in the revolution's fire, raised to distrust street kings, found himself drawn into Jack's orbit.
I don't think he's infatuated. I think he was at awe that my style was different. I think he liked the elegance that I brought into his life. You know what I'm saying? I used to tell him, look, man, you can't walk around here with your pants hanging on me. Let me get you something real. Change up your gear a little bit, man.
In Above the Rim, Birdie was eventually brought down, his sins catching up to him under the neon lights of the city that made him. But in real life, things were messier, bloodier. The lines between betrayal and survival were almost invisible, and nobody walked away clean. But Above the Rim did portray that just like Birdie found Kyle, sometimes back, Haitian Jack had. In 1993, Tupac Shakur was still struggling to keep his head above the noise. He was vulnerable and hungry, fire flashing behind his eyes but no map in his hands. He was still just a kid standing at the mouth of a storm he didn't even see coming. That's when Haitian Jack appeared.
He had asked me about Jack. You know, and I had known Jack through Scooter. And I used to say, you out of your league, you know?
You hang with the big boys now.
Yeah, you out of your league.
You didn't meet Jack. Jack chose you. And when he chose Pac, it wasn't random. It was like fate moving chess pieces behind the scenes. The first time they locked eyes was at a birthday party in some smoke-choked New York club.
I met Pac at this club. They were throwing a birthday party for me.
Okay.
G. George, a comedian from Harlem, brought him.
Jack's people said Pac wanted to meet him. Jack waved him over. That's how it started. Jack saw the wildness, the charm, and the hunger, and Pac saw what he wanted to become, unshakable. Jack lived 10 steps ahead of the curve. When everybody else was still flexing old brands, he was already burning through new ones.
You got still wearing Versace right now, like that style. 2017, nigga. Versace was 94, Playboy. 23 years later.
He wasn't chasing the American dream, he was wearing it on his back, and Pac soaked it all in. Jack pulled him into a world he'd only heard about in whispers, a world of sushi nights, high-stakes deals, and women who looked like they fell out of magazine covers. Shopping sprees where price tags didn't matter. Every moment was a masterclass in swagger. Pac wasn't just learning how to look the part, he was learning how to own the room.
Pac he loved people, of course, that soldiers, you understand?
Yeah.
He loved people that would get down. He loved these type of people, but he was very careful.
Later, locked away on Rikers Island, Pac would talk about it, the weight, the pull. They made me mature, he said in an interview, his voice almost regretful.
And Pac and Amani, Dolce & Gabbana. You know, I bought him a Rolex. And let me see if I could and educate him to how he needs to behave to make it.
Maturity didn't come easy. It came with blood and bruises and handshakes you couldn't take back. Jack remembered it too. Years later, sitting down for Hip Hop Uncovered, he smiled that slow, dangerous smile and said, "You got something for me? The kind of thing you say when you know you left fingerprints on a man's soul." It wasn't just friendship, it was transformation, and it bled right onto the screen. When Pac played Birdie in Above the Rim, he was living the cold ambition and the ruthless charisma of Haitian Jack. Everybody in the room could see it. You couldn't fake that kind of ice.
And he's in New York. I think he's filming Above the Rim. And he's hanging out with Haitian Jack. Biggie, I guess, warned Tupac about Haitian Jack, but Pac didn't really listen.
But every gift has a price. Around Pac's inner circle, the warnings started early. Guys like William Lassane, Tupac's cousin, could feel the danger humming in the air. William couldn't place it at first. That face, that presence, it gnawed at him until one drunken night at Pac's house. The past snapped into focus like a trap.
It finally occurred to me where I knew this guy. It occurred to me. Got up, And I went in the kitchen and I told Pac right in front of Jack.
I know where I know this dude from, William said, swaying half-conscious in the kitchen where Pac was showing off his latest guns. I met him in '83. The Tombs, Manhattan. He was in for shooting somebody.
Where I know this guy from. He's so-and-so, so-and-so. We met in 1983 in Rikers Island.
Oh, so you had been locked up with Jack before?
Yeah.
And
well, not Rikers Island, the Tombs.
The Tomb. Okay, so you had been locked up, and then it came to you that y'all was locked up together.
Right, we was in Manhattan. We was in the bullpen of either the Tombs or Manhattan Criminal Court.
The room froze, but Jack didn't blink. He just smiled, cool as ice. No offense taken. Pac, however, was offended. He defended Jack.
His position was, yo, you know what I'm saying? What do you know about him? You know, and he kind of was defending him, to be honest.
That was the pull Jack had on him. It's stronger than caution, stronger than history. And it burned a wedge straight through Pac's friendships. That night, fueled by cheap liquor and heavier emotions, Pac and William almost tore the house apart with shouts, curses, and shoving. The Outlaws and Big G dove in, trying to pull them apart before fists flew.
Me and Pac is about to fight, and they getting in between us.
Okay.
Yafeo is pushing me back from Pac, and G is holding Pac back, right?
Right.
William got thrown out, left sprawled on the porch, vomit drying on his shirt by morning. But by sunrise, the storm had passed. Inside, laughter crackled over breakfast. No grudges, no resentment, just another night in a life too fast and too real for apologies.
Woke up the next morning with dried up on my shirt, vomit all on my pants.
Right.
And I went back in the house, and my whole family is sitting in his house. His mother, my mother,
right,
the Outlaws,
right,
Pac, and they all laughing about what happened last night.
Still, the cracks were showing. Pac wasn't just learning swagger from Jack. He was learning how to move through the world with a shark smile and a gun tucked close to his ribs. Jack never forced him. He didn't have to. The streets taught their lessons quietly, in the way money slid across tables, in the way deals were made with a nod instead of a signature, in the way people who crossed the line just disappeared. Pac was taking notes, and somewhere deep down, he knew he was getting too close to something he couldn't control. But it was already too late. Jack had cracked something open inside of him, and Pac wasn't a kid on the edge anymore. He was falling headfirst into the fire. It was supposed to be just another night in Manhattan, November 18th, 1993. Up in the luxurious confines of the Parker Meridian Hotel, things spiraled. Ayanna Jackson, a young woman Pac had met a few nights earlier at Nell's nightclub, was there with him. What started with flirtation and promises of fame turned ugly behind those closed hotel doors. Jackson would later accuse Tupac, along with others, of sexting her. She was frantic when she left that room.
Singer was arrested Thursday night after a woman claimed that he and 3 other men overpowered her in a hotel suite.
Pac, dazed and handcuffed hours later, couldn't even fully process what had happened. But the fallout had begun, and somewhere in the shadows, Haitian Jack was already disappearing. Jack had been there for the party, maybe even helped orchestrate it, depending on whose version you believe. Pac wasn't so sure anymore. He had trusted Jack, leaned into his world when New York got too thick. But when the police came knocking, Jack somehow sidestepped the worst of it. Barely caught a charge, barely spent a night inside.
I just had to listen to the prosecution's closing argument, and it was just so far from the truth that it really just has me drained at the end of the day. But I'm leaving it in the hands of the jury. I'm learning a lot about people's innermost fears in this trial.
Pac wasn't stupid. He could smell a setup the way you smell gunpowder after a shot. The problem was, by the time he realized it, the bullet had already been fired. Tupac sat in Rikers Island in 1995, still trying to wrap his head around how the ground had been yanked out from under him. In the famous Vibe interview, you could almost hear the disbelief clinging to his words. Jack had introduced him to the streets, and maybe walked him straight into a trap. It was calculated, and it carved something open in Pac that would never quite heal. Pac couldn't help but wonder, had Jack sold him out? Had the friend who once promised to keep him out of trouble been greasing the wheels for his fall all along?
A lot of people don't know Pac used to get death threats, people always trying to test him.
The streets were whispering too. Pac's arrest was a thunderclap heard all across New York, but what came next was something colder and meaner. On November 30th, 1994, the Quad Studios shooting happened, It was another cold night, another trap laid in the concrete canyons of Manhattan. Pac thought he was doing a quick favor laying down some vocals for a little cash. Instead, he walked into a lobby drenched in blood and betrayal. He was shot 5 times, robbed, left sprawled on the floor while the world upstairs barely paused the beat. By then, Haitian Jack's name was already stitched into the underside of the story. Jack had introduced Pac to Booker, also Jimmy Henchman, the same man who paged Pac relentlessly that night, promising money that seemed to vanish and reappear like a magician's trick.
He was like, "You on your way?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm on my way." I stopped off to get some weed, smoked the weed, and he paged me again. "Where you at? Where you at? Where you at? Why you ain't coming?" I was like, "I'm coming, man. I'm on my way. Hold on." I wasn't thinking, why they want me here so bad?
Pac knew the street code. If the setup smelled wrong, it probably was. And if it involved Jack, well, he already had the scars to prove it. Pac couldn't keep the rage inside. Not after that. Not after pulling himself out of death's grip. Staggering into court the very next day, still bleeding under his suit jacket, he turned the mic into a weapon. On against all odds, he spit it raw, calling names without blinking. Haitian Jack, Jimmy Henchman, even Stretch, his old running mate, got caught in the fire.
And Stretch said, I spoke to Jimmy Henchman. And Jimmy Henchman said, Pop, you don't got enough money, you don't want to go to war with him. And he was like, Jimmy Henchman said, get your money right, then go to war.
Pac wasn't guessing. He knew something, and he was mad that Stretch was speaking to his enemy. Did Haitian Jack orchestrate the Quad Studios ambush? Nobody ever proved it. Jack himself would later dismiss the idea, painting himself as another casualty of bad rumors and worse friends.
Pac was all good when I was doing good things to him. Until we caught that punk case that was easily could have been beaten by both of us.
But in Pac's mind, the timing was too clean. The betrayal, too precise. The man who taught him how to move through New York had also taught him one final lesson. Trust no one, not even the ones who put a chain around your neck and call it love. Trust, as Pac had seen, can get you killed. Haitian Jack was a mystery wrapped in silk shirts and shadowy deals. But before he became the boogeyman of New York's nightlife and hip-hop royalty, Haitian Jack was just a kid trying to outrun destiny. He was born in Haiti, a land beautiful and brutal all at once. But Jack's future was never going to be contained by a single island. As a boy, he made his escape, slipping into the raw, unforgiving grind of Brooklyn.
He would tell me these stories more about his life and growing up, as a kid from Haiti, basically speaking, a foreign tongue in a really tough neighborhood in Brooklyn.
It was a different kind of jungle, where the stakes were higher and the wore sneakers instead of claws. Jack didn't just survive it, he studied it, memorized its language, became fluent in fear, favor, and finesse. By the time he could drive a car, he could also drive a crew into a job so smooth it looked choreographed. Muscle for hire, plug for any hustle, and always, always the guy who knew a guy who knew a guy. In the underworld of New York, Jack was a fixer before anyone even had a word for it. If you had a problem, he could make it disappear. If you needed something impossible, he could make a call. And if you crossed him, God help you. The man was smoother than a glass of aged cognac, but colder than the steel he kept tucked away for when diplomacy failed.
I didn't know Haitian Jack. I just knew that it was him and a big dude that he used to ride around with named Tim. And they were friends with Inch and Haitian Jack and all of them from Flatbush in the 90s.
And somehow, maybe it was the way he dressed or that mischievous gleam in his eye, Jack was everywhere, shoulder to shoulder with the glitterati. One night, it was a Versace party in South Beach, brushing past Madonna, laughing with Mike Tyson. Another night, it was a table at Crustacean in Beverly Hills, sipping drinks with Aretha Franklin and Stevie Wonder like they were old friends from the block. Jack had a passport to both worlds.
Get money and favors from different people in the industry.
The billion-dollar boardrooms and the blood-soaked basements, and he used it better than anyone. But he wasn't some cartoonish villain. Jack wasn't a killer lurking in the alleys waiting to put a bullet in your head. He was a hustler, an operator, a survivor.
Jack wasn't a killer. He wasn't a murderer or anything like that.
Bill Courtney, the lawman who would eventually be the architect of Jack's downfall, said it best. Jack was colorful. He could rob drug dealers with a smile on his face, dodging bullets while hauling off a 75-pound bag like it was just another Tuesday. And when he told the story later, it almost sounded fun.
There's Jack who orders jewelry from people like Jacob and other people and then doesn't pay him back, or has Wyclef order jewelry and then steals it, and Wyclef will say, well, I didn't know.
Jack had mastered the art of perception. But even then, even at the peak of his street fame, he wasn't broadcasting his moves. He didn't need a mic or a mixtape. His legend traveled faster than any rap record could. Mike Tyson, a man who'd stared down monsters in the ring, once tried to warn Tupac about hanging with Jack.
He had asked me about Jack. And I had known Jack the Scooter. And I used to say, "You out of your league."
You hang with the big boys now.
Yeah, you out of your league.
Tyson knew the difference between a hustler playing tough and a real wolf who had fed at the darkest parts of the world. He told Pac straight, "You're swimming with sharks now." Pac didn't listen, or maybe he thought he was too powerful to be touched. But Jack wasn't about playing by the rules, and he wasn't impressed by fame. So much so that as Tupac portrayed Haitian Jack on the set of Above the Rim, behind the scenes, his story was spiraling into something the cameras couldn't contain. The movie was about street dreams and gangsta nightmares. Off-camera, real gang members hung around the set, some as extras, others just orbiting the chaos. Fights broke out in alleyways and stairwells, just out of frame. Knuckles split, tempers snapped. There were days it felt like a single wrong look could turn the whole production into a war zone. At the center of it all, Tupac Shakur was changing. He was electric on camera, pure fire bottled in a black hoodie. But off camera, something darker was creeping in. One minute he was laughing, charismatic, pulling people in with that magnetic pull he had. The next he was pacing like a caged animal, jaw clenched, eyes darting like he was already living 3 lives ahead of everyone else. Somewhere during filming, the shooting and the allegations collided into Tupac's world like a freight train at full speed, right as Above the Rim was nearing the finish line. One night, the news started filtering through the set. Tupac had been shot.
I will tell you this about Tupac in the movie Above the Rim, that people might not know is, so during that, he got shot the first time, during that. All that stuff, the allegation and claim that came out and the shooting of him happened during Above the Rim.
The streets talked faster than any official announcement. Some said it was a robbery gone wrong. Others whispered about betrayal. All anyone knew for sure was that the star of their film was bleeding, and the future of the project suddenly hung in the balance. The filmmakers had no choice. The atmosphere on set, already razor thin, dropped into full paranoia. The director and producers huddled together.
It must be hard for a director to have his main character in jail, you know what I'm saying? And you have to shoot tomorrow, you know what I'm saying? But they never let me feel that.
Plans changed overnight. The ending they had scripted, carefully plotted out over months, was now a ticking bomb. There was no guarantee Tupac could even return to finish his scenes, so they started rewriting, reshaping the story in real time like battlefield medics triaging a wounded soldier. Then, almost like fate, they found a kid hanging around the crowd, somebody who looked uncannily like Tupac. Same stature, same haircut, even the same way of holding his jaw when he glared. They pulled him in quietly, barely explaining to anyone what was happening. This lookalike became their emergency parachute.
They found in the crowd a lookalike who looked just like Tupac. So if you look at Above the Rim, at the end of the movie,
when you watch the final scenes of Above the Rim, especially the ones on the basketball court, you'll catch it if you know what you're looking for. There's Tupac, fierce and focused in close-ups they had shot earlier. But in the wider shots, the longer takes where the camera pulls back just enough, it isn't him anymore. It's the double, filling in the blanks, moving through the choreography like a ghost wearing someone else's skin. The final basketball court sequence, once planned as a triumphant crescendo for the character of Birdie, now had a hollow echo to it. Even when they pieced it all together in the editing room, something about it felt off, like the energy of the set had bled into the film itself. It wasn't just a story about betrayal and violence anymore. It felt like a premonition. Behind every smooth line, every crooked smile, every bullet and betrayal, the truth is lurking. Birdie was a ghost from a world you didn't want to believe was real. Haitian Jack made sure of it. And like any good ghost, he's still out there, just out of sight, smiling in the shadows.